We light this candle to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also, to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together.
Amen. And welcome everyone to Wedgewood this morning. We're so happy that you made the decision on this dreary day that would have been so great to just stay in bed under the covers that you decided to join us at Wedgewood. We're just glad you're here. If you're here during the day, we have a lot of people who listen later in the day with our video and during the week. And whenever you're listening, we're just glad you chose to spend some time with us at Wedgewood. Our prelude this morning is a very fitting song. Unless we're Native American, we're all immigrants. And the song is Willie Nelson, Immigrant Eyes. All right, our words of wisdom today. We're reading from the First Nations version. We have two or three different versions we like to use. This is the First Nations version of the scripture. Hebrews 13:1. Keep loving each other as brothers and sisters of the family. Do not forget to be kind and welcoming to the stranger, for in this way some have welcomed spirit messengers without knowing it. Matthew 25:35. For I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was a stranger, and you gave me lodging. And the scripture goes on to ask, when did we do this? And Jesus replied, whatever you do for the least of my fellow human beings who needed help, you did for me. And before we continue our service, we have some exciting announcements. Next Sunday, from the Reproductive Coalition, we have a speaker, Alexandra Carbone, will be speaking about women's rights and what's going on in that arena today and how we can be of help as we are called to help those who are struggling. So we'll look forward to that next Sunday. The book club, Social Justice Book Club, we are reading The Tyranny of Merit, and we are going to continue discussing chapter 4. We started discussing it last time, but decided there's so much in this book that we are going to continue with chapter 4. So we hope to see you. It's open to anybody, members, non-members. We have a great group that meets once a week on Zoom. We read a chapter and discuss, and we select ourselves, we vote on what book to do next. So join us. And our Wedgewood film series is coming up and is on the calendar. Last year, we did a day-long film festival on Palestine, Gaza. This year, we decided instead of doing all one day, we would do 3 different days on 3 different topics. The first one is April 13th, and the film is God and Country. It is addressing Christian nationalism. We will have a discussion following the showing of the film, but go ahead, mark your calendar. You don't want to miss this. Homecoming. Ben, we hope you and your family will join us too, as former members. It is May the 4th, and we are going to the Pasquale's farm. We had such a great time there for our holiday uh, lunch, and so we're going back to the farm to have our homecoming. It's just a wonderful, wonderful place, and we love going there. So mark your calendar. More information is coming. It will be bring a dish and share. So start planning what you're going to make and bring to share with everyone. 5 calls. I don't know if you've used this or not. It's a great way to contact your legislators. Would somebody like to speak to this who's using it?
I've used it and it's fantastic and it's quick too. It's very user friendly. You just download it on your app and it has a script for you to speak with whomever your Congress person is. And it has a range of topics that you can choose from. And boy, did it have a range of topics this past week.
Yes. And I even found a topic I wanted to address that wasn't on the list. And so I messaged them. They say if you have something that's not here. And so I messaged them and got that topic put on the list. So it's
Oh,
very,
wonderful.
yeah,
Wonderful.
it's very easy to use. Don't be afraid of it. And it just brings up who you need to contact and a list of issues. We do a lot of social justice work here at Wedgewood. Hoping that we're going to do the laundry project once again when we go into a laundromat. And all the people that come to the laundromat that day get their laundry done free, and we help them wash and fold. And have a great time socializing with them and playing with their kids. And we're planning that coming up soon. And we have some other projects that are coming up, the film festival, to help educate people in the community. So every everything you give goes to social justice. We don't have a building to keep up anymore, and we love that we can spend what we have on helping other people. So we do appreciate your support in any amount. All right, thank you very much. And I believe Ryan is leading our extravagant welcome this morning.
We are all welcome here. Welcome to a community that works for peace, justice, equality, and the care of Mother Earth.
We
We
are
are
all
all
welcome
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 here.
here.
here. An extravagant welcome to you because of your gender identification, sexual orientation, ethnicity, economic situation, physical and mental challenges, doubting or believing, being depressed or full of joy.
We
We
are
are
all
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 welcome
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 here.
here.
here. We are a community of curious and creative spiritual seekers striving to learn from and embody the way of servant leadership.
We are
We are all
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 welcome
welcome
here.
welcome
here.
here. We focus on the plundered and the marginalized as we try to address the major issues of our day. We
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 are
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 all
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 welcome
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 here.
here.
here. You are invited to share your passion, your inspiration, and your personal story as one of the ways to help heal the world.
We are
We
We are
are
all
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 welcome
welcome
welcome here.
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 Thank you. I have a sign in my front yard written in 3 different languages, and it says, no matter where you've been, no matter where you're from, we're glad that you're our neighbor. And that's how we feel at Wedgewood. No matter where you've been, or whether what life has taken you, or where you're from, we're glad you're at Wedgewood. We welcome everyone, and we sincerely mean it. We come to a time now for celebrations and concerns. We have several people traveling today, so we want to remember Ashanti and Thomas who are on trips. Um, Adam, Ryan says his friend Adam from the car accident is doing much better, but we certainly want to remember Adam. Are there others? My daughter-in-law's mother is still hospitalized. I believe they are beginning to get to the root of her problems, but we'll continue to remember her, please. And of course, our nation, as always, each week it seems to be more and more issues that we want to think about. And I saw this morning huge protests going on in Budapest. I don't know if you've seen that or not. And it's over the same type of thing we're having here. They have a Putin-backed dictator trying to take control, and there are huge protests there. If you haven't seen it, look it up. I posted one on my Facebook page. A lot of people don't know about that. I don't think we're getting a lot of news from other parts of the world, perhaps, but that is one you need to look up because those people have the courage that we need. Any others? Please remember Canada. You know, my children live in Canada, and I'm very concerned about the situation there. Um, Greenland, Panama, Ukraine,
The Congo,
Palestine,
the Congo.
the Congo.
Yes.
Yes. All right. In the spirit of Wedgewood, are there other celebrations? I know we got two celebrating birthdays, Liz and Ashanti. Any others? We had a great night out this week with our monthly meetup. So that's a celebration, and we hope that you'll join us next month. We have a meetup in person once a month. We just go to different places. This time we went to Altantica, Mexican, and we just go to different places. So join us next month. We had a great time out. Any other celebrations? All right, in the spirit of Wedgewood, if you believe in prayer, please use this time for prayer and lift up the things that we've talked about. If not, meditation, just a quiet time to get focused on the week ahead and shake off all the junk from last week. Whatever you choose to use the time for, we will have a moment of silence. Amen. Very dear to our hearts today and for the last few weeks have been the immigrants, the refugees who are living among us, the Ukrainians who are now being threatened. We were just talking about even American citizens have been picked up. Um, our Latino friends. It's just so much and so many. And so we are very privileged to have Ben Snyder, a dear, dear friend of mine, and a fantastic immigration attorney. He's helped so many people that I know. And I've had questions and had to call him. He's always there to help. And his work comes not because it's work, it comes from his heart. It comes from his heart. It's not a job to him, it's his heart. So welcome, and he is a former member of Wedgewood. They moved away, and we're just thrilled to have you back and to speak to us. And then I'm sure we all have some questions.
Well, thank you, Melba, and thank you for inviting me to come back to Wedgewood and address the group here today. Just as you said, my work in immigration comes not from merely a position of needing to put food on the table, but does come from my heart and comes from um, my own spirituality. I as a bit of a background on me, I was raised Presbyterian, but ingrained in um, uh, the Christian principles of charity and equality and celebrating the differences of others. Sort of a progressive Christian upbringing. And, one of my favorite Bible verses, uh, which is one where there is no ambiguity. It's one of the clearest and most direct verses in the Bible. And that's from the Old Testament, Leviticus chapter 19, verse 34. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as you love yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Just as the is reflected in the verses that you read earlier from Matthew, uh, the way immigration and immigrants should be treated is one of the most clear and consistent and deliberate themes in the Christian Bible and in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And so, I'm glad the documentary about Christian nationalism is on the agenda for the film festival because, in my view, that is the one of the most egregious perversions of the uh, uh, political rights uh, misuse of Christianity is somehow suggesting that it's Christian or it's godly to treat immigrants the way that they're being treated in our country right now. Um, but I'll explain a little bit further about myself from my immigration legal credentials. So I went to Elon University School of Law in Greensboro. Went to Guilford College in Greensboro, it's a Quaker college, and went to Elon University School of Law. Graduated in 2012, and while in law school, had the good fortune of working with my law professor, being taught by my law professor in immigration named Jeremy McKinney, who is the adjunct professor of the immigration course there. And he is a nationally known immigration attorney, and was the most recent past president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, which is a really an international organization, about just under 14,000 professionals throughout the United States and throughout the world. But that focus our legal practice on immigration law in private practice and education. So lawyers and law professors, not ICE attorneys, not prosecutors. So everyone on the claimant side, the respondent side, is typically most immigration lawyers who focus in that practice area, which really does require a practice focus. It's difficult to do immigration law and many other types of law. It'll consume all of your time and energy. Are members of the American Immigration Lawyers Association, and so as I did well enough in his class that in the summer of 2012, when President Obama announced the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program for the first time, or the DACA program, I was one of the former students that got a call from Jeremy McKinney to come to his law office and help process DACA applications for Dreamers. That was my first foray into the legal profession, having just finished law school, and I've never looked back. I've been practicing exclusively immigration law since then. I am a active member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. I'm the current media liaison for the Carolinas chapter. I also serve on the state bar of North Carolina Legalization Specialization Committee. North Carolina is a state that offers specialization recognition in various practice areas, and I sit on the committee for immigration. So in other words, we write the tests that other lawyers take to become specialists in immigration law, and we grade those tests, and we name new specialists they do that every 2 years. I've been practicing immigration law now for 13 years, really more like 14 years, because I also worked in the Elon Law Humanitarian Immigration Law Clinic. My first work I actually did was still as a student working at the Humanitarian Immigration Law Clinic, where we processed asylum applications, all pro bono work, run by one of my very dear friends and mentors, Heather Scavone, an immigration lawyer in Greensboro, originally with the Quaker Friends meeting there in Greensboro, who operated the immigration clinic. And I've now practiced immigration law under the Obama administration, under Trump 1.0, under Biden, and now under Trump 2.0. So I can explain a little bit about what's going on the similarities of what we're seeing now with what we saw during Trump 1.0, And in so doing, I can explain a little bit about what we expect to happen, how we think this is going to go, and how these policies, we've seen this before, under the first Trump administration, we sort of have seen the game plan. We've seen how it works out. I'll also explain a little bit about what's new this time around, the way that they're doing things differently. And then I'm, of course, happy to answer questions. And, I see this more as a discussion, a dialogue, and not a monologue. So I'll just explain a bit from my side, and I'm happy to open it up for questions. Okay. So, a very basic background, sort of, I'll try to do a 60-second immigration 101. The law of the United States is, and this is the law, it's similar in most countries, but this is specifically the United States. And I'll note that I only practice U.S. immigration law. I know I get questions sometimes about, people. I'm increasingly getting questions from folks about relocating to Canada or other countries. And I do have great friends and colleagues I can refer people to, but I practice exclusively U.S. immigration law. And it's the law of the United States that any person who is not a U.S. citizen is not allowed in the United States unless they meet certain specific criteria and conditions and comply with certain procedure. Okay. And the U.S. Recognizes birthright citizenship, or called res. I forgot the Latin, so forgive me, but it's birthright citizenship that res soli. Okay, so the rights of soil is the Latin term, but it's basically we're one of the largest and one of the few countries of our size and sort of degree of industrial development and so forth that offers or recognizes birthright citizenship. But that's been the law since the Civil War, effectively. The Fifth through the 14th amendments recognize birthright citizenship. We also have a naturalization process. But before one can naturalize, they must be a lawful permanent resident, okay, or a green card holder. And in order to obtain a green card, you must meet one of a very limited range of requirements. There are effectively 4 ways that one gets a green card, okay? So again, just to take a step back, there's basically 4 statuses that someone can be in. You're either a citizen, or you're a green card holder, or you have a temporary form of legal status, whether that is presently here with a valid temporary visa or under some other temporary status like temporary protected status, or TPS is something I'll talk about more, or DACA, or that I mentioned before, or one of the parole programs, which I'll discuss further, or you're undocumented. Okay, so citizen, lawful permanent resident, temporary legal resident, or undocumented. Those are the 4 statuses that one may have in the United States. And each one has different rights and has different degrees of vulnerability to ICE enforcement, immigration and customs enforcement. And there are the lines are not always quite clear. There is some vagueness sometimes. There are people who are citizens or should be considered citizens, but don't have paperwork proving they're citizens. And it's maybe difficult to obtain paperwork that demonstrates citizens. That's why this issue with voter ID law is a real issue for some people, because there are a lot more citizens in the country who don't have proof of their identity or citizenship status than is commonly imagined or is assumed. Okay. But if you're not a citizen and you wish to live here in the United States, live and work here without restriction permanently, under the law, you have to obtain permanent resident status, and you must be a permanent resident generally for a minimum 5 years in order to naturalize. And there are only 4 ways to become a lawful permanent resident. One is through family sponsorship. And in fact, that's the way that most people become lawful permanent residents. Just to give you a ballpark figure, about 1 to 1.2 million people become lawful permanent residents of the United States every year. It's a relatively small number, by the way, in comparison per capita, by comparison to other countries like Germany, Australia, the UK, Canada. They have rates of foreign born between 25 to 35% of the total population are foreign born in the United States. It's right now it's about 15%. Okay, so all this hysteria about immigration generally, we're still talking about approximately 15% of the U.S. population, and it's about half of what the average is in other industrialized countries. Okay, so it's important to understand that now, just from sheer numbers, we attract more immigrants than other parts of the world, than other countries. But when based on per capita percentage of the population, we're among one of the countries with the lowest percentage of foreign-born residents. But every year, about 1.1 to 1.2 million foreign nationals become lawful permanent residents or green card holders. Of that number, approximately 750,000 would have gotten their green card through an immediate relative sponsor, which means a U.S. citizen spouse or a U.S. citizen child, adult child sponsoring, so a 21 or older adult U.S. citizen child sponsoring them, or are the minor children of U.S. citizens. Okay, but either a parent-child or spousal relationship with a citizen. Approximately three quarters, a little less than 3/4 of every new green card, of all the new green card recipients every year are sponsored by immediate relatives. So family-based immigration. Then beyond immediate relatives, you then have your limited categories, or called your family-based preference categories. So other degrees of relationship or degrees of relationship with lawful permanent residents. So being the spouse of a green card holder, like spouse of another green card holder, or being the minor child of a green card holder, or being the sibling of a citizen, or being the adult child of a U.S. citizen, or the adult child of a green card holder. These are different family categories of relationship that also can confer green card status, but are numerically limited to a relatively small number per year. For example, the worldwide number is 20,000 siblings of U.S. citizens. And on top of those numbers, on those caps or quotas, there are also per country limits. So no more than 7% of those visas can go to citizens of any one country. So what that means is for countries from which we already have a lot of immigrants, including Mexico, Philippines, China, and India, just by sheer population or proximity to the United States, sheer population size or proximity to the United States and or ties with the United States. Say sibling-based green card process becomes laughably inaccessible. To be specific, the process for the sibling of the process for a Mexican citizen who is the sibling of a U.S. citizen to become a green card holder is subject to a 30-year backlog, which means that if the sibling were to file a petition, if the U.S. citizen were to file a petition for their sibling from Mexico to come to the United States and live here as a lawful permanent resident, that citizen of Mexico would be eligible to do so. And they filed that petition today on March 16th, 2025. That sibling may be coming to the United States in 2055 because of the low number of green cards, numerically limited green cards based on that degree of familial relation. There are enough approved petitions to meet the fiscal year limit for the next 30 years. there's a backlog, there's a stockpile of approved petitions, people who have demonstrated they meet all the requirements to immigrate under the law, but because of an arbitrary number restriction, an arbitrary limit on that category of green card, it'll take someone who's entering that process to, it'll take take them 30 years to wait that line. Okay, so when they say they just need to get in line, okay, well, they can get in line and make plans for 2055, in that particular category, and it varies across categories. So that's the family-based outlook. Okay, if you are a new immigrant, there's about 75% chance that you're a new immigrant because you're either married to a citizen, or you have an adult citizen child who sponsored you, or you yourself are a minor child of a U.S. citizen. Beyond that, there are additional family degrees of family relation, or the next most common category is employment-based, employment sponsored. So this is someone who's coming to the United States based on a job offer. All employment-based categories are subject to preference quotas. So there is no equivalent of an immediate relative, which is unrestricted. Okay, that's important to understand. Immediate relatives, there's no limit to the number of green cards the government can issue every year. So if you're married to a citizen, you'll get your green card, and it takes about 6 months to 6 to 12 months or so, approximately. But if you're applying based on being the sibling of a citizen, it could take 30 plus years. Okay, but the government will issue as many green cards as there are qualified applicants under the marriage family relation or a parent-child family relation. But there is no equivalent immediate relative category for the employment-based categories. And most citizens of India, for example, immigrate to the United States through one of the employment-based categories. And again, because India's a country that has a large population, and because our immigration quotas are subject to a per-country quota, even a Indian national who's been approved for the rare EB-1A, is what is called employment-based first preference category A, EB-1A, or Einstein visa. You may have heard of it. People who immigrated to the U.S. on the Einstein. Even such an individual right now is subject to a 5-year backlog. So, if we were wanting to make a citizen of India who has found the cure for cancer and is their temporary research scholar visa, a J visa, is reaching its 5-year max, and they've an approved EB-1A, they would be forced under our immigration law as it stands right now. They'd be forced to return to their home country of India, regardless of how qualified they are, unless they could potentially get into one of the family-based categories or immediate relative family-based categories. Okay, so even if they were already married and they just married to their Indian spouse, and they discover the cure for cancer, they would nonetheless be subject to deportation at the end of their temporary research scholar visa, because of the arbitrary limits on the number of green cards that are issued every year based on category and based on nationality. But under the employment-based categories, you have an extraordinary ability category, that's EB-1A. You also have EB-2, which is for those with advanced degrees, but aren't not necessarily world famous superstars, but have master's degrees and PhDs, or who have bachelor's degrees plus 5 years of experience in their field. Then you have EB-3, employment-based third preference, which is those who have bachelor's degrees or who work in skilled trades. They have EB-4, which includes religious workers, clergy, also non-clergy religious vocation workers. And then you have EB-5, which is based on investment or job creation. So that requires an investment of $800,000 into a new business that creates at least 10 jobs. But EB 1 through 4, they all require a U.S. employer to sponsor you. So that it's still it's U.S. employer driven. Just like the family-based process is family member driven, that petition starts with a petition from your U.S. citizen spouse or family member. The employment-based process generally, there are some exceptions, but generally requires a U.S. Employer to file a petition for you. In other words, any person immigrating to the United States is dependent on U.S. ties to start. So there's very little wholly self-directed immigration. Referring to I'm using the term immigration under the current legal system that we have established. There's very little fully self-directed. It's dependent on having U.S. ties. Okay, family-based, employment-based, and then you also have the humanitarian programs, asylum, refugee status. There are other various programs for victims of violent crime who assist the police, victims of human trafficking, victims of childhood abuse, abandonment, or neglect, victims of domestic violence. There are various programs for refugees and asylees and others who need the security of our legal institutions due to their victimhood and being victims of various forms of maltreatment, mistreatment. And then you have the diversity visa lottery. That's the fourth way you become a green card holder. That is just a lottery. They run a lottery and there's 55,000 visas or green cards, I should say, every year for individuals from countries from which we do not have a large population of immigrants. So citizens of Mexico are not eligible. Citizens of Canada are not eligible. Many of the larger countries, most of the larger countries are not eligible, but countries with smaller populations can enter citizens of those countries can enter the lottery, and you have about as much chance of winning the Powerball as you do the diversity visa lottery. It's a legit lottery. You have about a 0.01% chance of being selected. So, anyways, that's how the legal system works. And then if you're not a permanent resident through one of those means, you're here temporarily. And so there's a number of different visa categories one can be here temporarily on. Some common ones people might know of the H-1B. It's for high-skilled professionals. So in other words, those who work in positions that require bachelor's degrees at minimum. Then you have the F student visa. So you can come study in the U.S. And you are eligible to be here for so long as you are in school. There's a similar program called the J program for international exchange visitors. By the way, you also have official diplomatic visas for employees of foreign governments called the A and the G category visas. A is for actual diplomats. G is for like diplomatic staff or foreign service staff or employees of NATO and other international organizations, the World Health Organization, the International Monetary Fund. That they have special international staff visas as well. But then, student visas, high school work visas, you also have seasonal temporary visas for, trades and other, types of labor that don't require, bachelor degree education. So think landscaping, agricultural work, H-2A and H-2B. Those are called the H-2 category visas. You also have special religious worker visas, special visas for athletes, special visas for international entertainers and performers. And then you have the non-visa program. So visas require generally one to go to the U.S. embassy in their home country and obtain a sticker in their passport before they can come to the United States. And the type of visa they can come to the United States on depends on what the nature of the activity is, what the planned activity is. Okay, so like for tourism, it's called a Category B visa. So most citizens of most countries are required to have a tourist visa glued into their passport before they can come to the United States, even just to visit Disney World. And certainly if you're studying or working, that requires a special category visa. But even apart from the visas, there are different programs providing temporary status to foreign nationals who are here and regardless of how they got here. Okay, so the big one is DACA or the DREAM Act. they call it DREAM Act. The DREAM Act is really a piece of legislation that would grant legal status to, like, permanent green card status to children who were brought here as minors. Um, and the first Trump administration ended new applicants in that program. There's also temporary protected status, which is kind of a form of a temporary blanket asylum. So if the U.S. government determines it's too dangerous for nationals of any particular country to return to their home country, either because of civil strife or natural disaster, then they can obtain temporary status in the U.S. And there are other similar programs. So that's and anyone who is either not in valid temporary status, or who is not a green card holder, or is not a citizen. So in other words, the undocumented. Anyone who is undocumented is subject and therefore at risk, it's subject to and at risk of deportation. Now, it's important to understand that the U.S. immigration system, by virtue of the U.S.'s membership in the United Nations, and as being signatories to the United Nations the High Commission on the Status of Refugees, being a member of the United Nations, requires that we offer rights to migrants for due process. So we generally don't have summary deportations except at border encounters. But for those who have been in the United States, who are encountered in the interior of the United States, they are entitled to an immigration court proceeding before the government can deport them. And those who are undocumented are subject to deportation. Well, there's an estimated somewhere between 12 to 20 million undocumented individuals in this country, and it is simply impossible for the U.S. government to deport them all in any kind of reasonable fashion. There's only 44,000 detention beds available in the U.S. That's the gross in totality of the U.S. Detention system specifically for immigration. Okay, so immigration detention, there's only 44,000 beds available. These are private run detention facilities. The U.S. also, the ICE also has, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Homeland Security, also has contracts with various local jails and detention facilities throughout the U.S. maintained by states and municipalities. But there's a real capacity issue that prevents mass deportation from happening as a matter of pure logistics. So during the Obama administration and the Biden administrations, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security enacted a very thoughtful and robust system of prosecutorial discretion. In other words, they would not deport or I should say, they would not commit the time or resources and personnel necessary to deport someone unless there was a serious criminal conviction in their record, or they were considered a recent arrival who had absconded and not participated in the immigration court program. In other words, if you had not shown up for your immigration court date, you are issued immediately a removal order. Okay, so you were found removable in absentia, and so ICE would not deport folks who didn't have a criminal conviction, or had not already been ordered deported by no showing immigration court. So those were the priorities for deportation. I mean, I know I've spent a long time already, but I want to quickly sort of explain what is going on in the Trump administration now. On day one, so January 21st of the new Trump administration, they canceled the prosecutorial discretion program of President Biden. So, in other words, there is no priority system. Everyone's a priority, regardless if they are have a criminal conviction or not. So that's important to understand, and you're seeing news stories about that now. I've read a news story this morning in USA Today about a Trump voter. I didn't catch the state, probably Florida if I had to guess, but a white American straight cis man married to a woman from Peru who had been here for years since childhood, spoke with a thick Southern accent and without, barely speaks English, or sorry, barely speaks Spanish, and they had filed the process. They were in process. They are in process um, to get her green card through her marriage to him. And she was arrested by ICE in Florida and is being processed for deportation now. And this is a Trump voter. This is someone who asked for this, but he thought that Trump was going after the criminal aliens. On day 2 of the Trump administration, the every ICE field office in the country was ordered to now meet arrest quotas and to increase the number of arrests of foreign nationals suspected of being in violation of the immigration law from 75 per month on average to 75 per day under threat of being fired. So ICE is with the ICE field office directors under threat of being fired. So if they don't make arrests, they could lose their jobs. And I have to explain also, it's the important thing to know about ICE. I have respect for law enforcement, but ICE is, if they were very intelligent or competent, they'd be in the FBI or the CIA. ICE is, they enforce civil law. They don't have to abide by the constitutional rules. So there's no Miranda warnings. Okay. There's no a criminal due process. And therefore, they're sort of the least trained and lowest educated members of federal law enforcement in the entire U.S. government. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel to populate ICE field offices. So you take that population and you subject them to arbitrary 75 per day quotas. They start making arrests of people who are not priorities, who are easy, low-hanging fruit, and even violating the rights of those who are here legally, including as green card holders and citizens. So you have this intense acceleration and ramping up of ICE enforcement activity being carried out by individuals who are not very well trained and not very well educated in law or even immigration law. And you start seeing abuses of power and misconduct, police misconduct and mistreatment. On top of that, you have politically motivated arrests. So the Trump administration is basically turning ICE into his own personal political police unit, arresting people like Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia University in New York, who has not broken any law. And are using an obscure, esoteric component of the Immigration and Nationality Act that has not been invoked to remove someone since the communist McCarthy era Red Scare. It was the last in the early 50s. That was the last time this sort of political speech that could potentially threaten foreign relations statute has been used to attempt to deport someone. That case is still pending, of course, but to attempt to deport someone who otherwise had not broken the law and who is a lawful permanent resident of the United States. So that's Mahmoud Khalil's position. I know I've gone on too long already, so I'll wrap up and then I'm happy to discuss further and answer questions. And I kind of I've only scratched the surface of really what I wanted to talk about today, but there's a lot to cover. But the U.S. government under President Trump, the immigration enforcement is both malicious, but also inept and incompetent. They at the same time that they are ending prosecutorial discretion and removing focus on criminal, those with serious criminal convictions, They also fired 79 federal immigration judges. There are now less than 300 federal immigration judges who are faced with a backlog of 3.5 million immigration court cases that are already in the system. And now they want to throw more into that system. It is not possible for them to affect the deportations against those who are currently in the system without changing the law and stripping the due process rights of those individuals, which is highly unlikely. Even without the Senate filibuster, there's going to, it's going to be impossible for them to pass that law with any amount of democratic resistance. So they are malicious in their desire to create fear among immigrants and subject them to inhumane treatment, but they're also incompetent in being able to actually affect the deportations because you have conflicting interests. You want government efficiency and firing people who you don't like or you think are too left-leaning, but at the same time, you are thus grinding the machinery to a halt and make it impossible to actually affect these deportations. So, this is a dark time when it comes to the U.S.'s treatment of migrants. And I could go through many other examples of how the government is, suddenly now adopted this malicious attitude towards foreign nationals. But if there's any light at the end of the tunnel or any room for hope, is in the fact that they are incompetent in actually getting it done the way they want to. And on the whole, you'll find, just as we've already seen, Trump is not deporting people at higher rates than the Biden administration was. In fact, Trump's immigrant or ICE arrest and removal numbers in the first full month of his administration, February 2025, were several tens of thousands lower, or around 10,000 lower than February 2024 under Biden. Okay, so they come at it with a nasty attitude, but they're not capable of actually getting anything better or more effective done in their efforts. With that, I know we've reached the top of the hour, so I'm happy to discuss further. But suffice it to say, this is a time in which foreign nationals really need the care, concern, and sympathy of U.S. citizens like ourselves, because they're getting it. They're being mistreated by the federal government, so they need to know that they have friends among the U.S. citizenry, and that the government doesn't reflect the attitudes of the people.
Oh, thank you, Ben. That was so informative. What I would like to do is just have our closing prayer, and then we'll open it up for discussion. And that way, oh, you can't hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
That we have our closing prayer, and then we will open it up for discussion. That way we can turn the recording off and just talk without being recorded. So let us have our closing benediction. We call you by many names: God, Father, Jehovah, the Great Spirit, the mystery of the universe. But whatever name we call you, we know you are of love. May we always recognize your spirit in the refugee family, speaking safety from violence, the migrant worker bringing food to our tables, the asylum seekers simply seeking justice, the unaccompanied child traveling in a dangerous world. Give us hearts that break open whenever our brothers and sisters turn to us. Give us hearts that no longer turn deaf to their voices in times of need. Give us eyes to recognize a moment for grace instead of a threat. Give us voices that fail to remain silent, but have the courage to advocate for our siblings. Give us hands that reach out in welcome and in work for a more just and safe world. May it be so. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts out into the world beyond these walls until we are together again. Go in peace.